Alright, what's going on, guys? Over the past few days, I've had the opportunity to get hands-on with a new Soulslike coming out called Deathbound. Deathbound is being made by Trialforge Studio and brings a new twist on the Soulslike genre. Now, I was given a code to play through a little bit of a pre-alpha demo, one decently big level, ending with a boss fight, and I have a lot of thoughts that I want to share about this. I'm just going to give you my raw, unfiltered, honest impressions, entirely subjective to me, so others may agree or disagree with some of the things I say, but I can only speak from my experience. Now, this is also not going to be a review of the game, as I only got to play a very small snippet, and that content is still in pre-alpha. So although the game doesn't have a release date as of now, I'm sure the final product is going to look quite a bit different. And one final thing before we dive into it, you're going to notice a lot of screen tearing. That's not an issue with my recording. I was playing the game on an RTX 3070, and although it's not the worst thing in the world, this was a visual glitch I was unable to get rid of, and I spent about an hour trying to change settings, and nothing worked. But that was the only glitch or performance issue that I had, at least the only one that I noticed throughout my time playing. But with that out of the way, let's get into the actual meat of the game. One of the first things I noticed when diving into Deathbound is that the game does follow the standard Souls-like formula. The controls and main gameplay loop will be familiar to any Souls player, however the primary twist on this is the ability to morph between heroes. Instead of having one standard character with one build, you have many different ones that you can switch to at any time, all with their own specialties and drawbacks. And when I began this demo, it started me with one dexterity build, a quick thief with daggers and a crossbow, a heavy strength build that wielded a two-handed great hammer, and then a magic user who had a medium range lightning spell and a close range fire explosion. Now, typically I don't like these kind of games that have a hero system. I like to play the games with a build that I want to use and don't like being forced to switch up my playstyle. And so in that stubbornness, I decided to stick with the strength build for roughly the first half of this demo. And I really wish I hadn't done that. It was a terrible choice, because when I finally decided to start switching up the heroes and playing the game as intended, it felt much better. But let's talk about the most important aspect of any Souls-like, the combat. And I'm gonna keep it a buck with you guys. What I played definitely needs some work. I wouldn't say it's definitely bad, however, there's a lot of clunk. And that word has different meanings to different people. However, in my book, when I say something's clunky, it's an overall feeling of lack of response. Attacks don't happen immediately when I press a button. Dodge timings felt incredibly inconsistent, to the point where I just relied on positioning and decided to give up on dodging at all. And everything in general just felt pretty slow. Now, granted, I was using the heaviest character in the game for the first half, but those feelings didn't go away when I switched heroes. So I do hope that in the final release they do make the response happen a bit quicker, or at least feel that way. But again, that's just my personal experience and opinion. Others may feel quite differently. When it comes to art direction and graphics, the game has this sort of post-apocalyptic sci-fi vibe to it, with a bit of a cartoon twist. I'm not a huge fan of this style. I tend to prefer much more realism, but it grew on me as I played through it. Now, the reason I bring that up is because the environments tended to run together quite a lot. It was very hard to distinguish between rooms, and I got lost really easily. There was a lot of time off camera I just spent running against every wall in the room because I couldn't figure out where to go, and eventually I would find a very tiny doorway hidden around a corner that blends together since every wall is exactly the same. I don't think it was necessarily a problem with the layout of the level, more so just the fact that there weren't enough natural guidances or ways to tell that a path that just may lead to one or two items is different from the actual required path to progress the level. I'm not saying there need to be flashing signs and arrows or anything like that, but I was really struggling to find the intended path. Now let me talk about something I did enjoy quite a bit. When unlocking the first new hero, I was sent into this realm of memories, and this setting was really cool. You're on these floating rocks with a large portal sucking everything in at the back, learning more about this new character that you're unlocking, and testing the build in the process. Now, as someone who doesn't really care for guided story experiences that much, I was intrigued by what I was learning, and it did make me want to explore the lore a bit. The segment wasn't too long, and it didn't feel as though I was pulled away from what I was playing before in an intrusive way, but because I experienced this little segment, Throne was the only character that I actually cared about a little bit, but perhaps we'll learn more about the other characters in the final product. But as for the overall story of the game, I didn't experience enough to learn what's really going on, and there weren't many cues to point me in a certain direction or get me to ask more questions about the world. Although again, I think that's just a symptom of only playing for a few hours. But I want to talk more about the hero system because again, I don't like games that normally do this. But I did actually come to really enjoy how it worked and the combat abilities you could pull off. There are some really cool things at play here. If you look in the bottom left hand corner at the hero icons, you can see a blue line connecting two of them and a red line connecting another two. These are conflicts or alliances between the heroes, depending on the way you have them ordered, and it correlates to the factions they're aligned with in the game's lore. And this translates into buffs and debuffs that affect your gameplay with those characters. Now, the way the game intends you to use these is to not be married to one specific character and switching between all of them at different times, consistently to perform different roles. For example, you can activate a buff with the caster character and then switch to your strength build to deal heavy damage, and then switch to the thief to get out of the way quickly, all in the span of a few seconds. There's a very high skill ceiling here, and one that I definitely did not master in my limited time playing. Now, this wasn't something I even really got the hang of until the boss fight, when I finally had somewhat of a grasp on how these systems worked. And I'll give you an example real quick. The game's primary healing mechanic, basically this game's version of an Estus flask, will heal the character you're using when activated, but damage the ones you aren't. So there's a risk involved. But whenever you damage an enemy, you do a bit of healing to your inactive characters. Now, during the boss fight, I realized the best tool I had here was the caster's fire magic, but she wasn't great for dodging, and I knew I would end up taking some damage. So whenever I would get hit as the caster, instead of using the healing item and damaging my inactive characters, I would instead switch to the thief, which was at full health now, get a bunch of very quick hits in, and then switch back and repeat that loop over and over. Now, another option I could have done is use the caster and get some ground between myself and the boss, cast a fire buff, and then switch to my strength build to get big hits in. You can see how there's a lot of chemistry there that can be achieved. So I actually did really like that system. But let's talk about this boss fight in general for a second. This is the impending truth, and I do have to say my opinions on this are mixed. Here you're seeing my first attempt at it, and right off the bat I was able to notice that the AI was a bit broken. There were times when it would just straight up miss me with its attacks, and I could just walk behind it, and it would continue attacking in the direction I used to be. Now, as a tutorial boss, I'm not expecting its attacks to be hard to dodge, but it was almost laughable how easy it was to trick it, and how aimless it appeared to be. Now, with that being said, it did do a lot of damage in the times I did get hit, and it was able to trap me in a corner a few times, which resulted in 2 deaths, but I was able to bring it down on my 3rd attempt after I figured out how the switching and healing mechanics worked between the active and inactive characters. When it comes to the boss's actual moveset, I think it's fine. The boss itself has 3 phases, each of which unlock a few more moves, and in the 3rd phase it gets some ranged magic attacks, which did shake things up a little bit, but my main gripe with the boss is its massive health pool. On my 3rd attempt, I only got hit a handful of times, but it was still a 10 to 12 minute fight. And for a tutorial boss, I think that's way too long, but that's just my opinion on it. So to wrap all this up, let me give a few positives and negatives. Starting with the positives, I think there's a lot of creativity here. I do like the sort of sci-fi setting, and I hope the rest of the game leans into that more than just having post-apocalyptic monsters. That being said, there was one monster that I thought was pretty cool. This really tall skeleton with long stretchy arms. He was actively fighting the enemies in the area and cleared it out for me, but then subsequently killed me 4 or 5 times. This guy was harder than the actual boss. I like this new feature they have in a perfect dodge. If landed correctly, you get this sort of slowed time, and it's very satisfying to pull off when you can, which makes it a shame that the dodge overall felt pretty unreliable. And to reiterate an earlier point, I think there's a lot of potential with the character stories as well. I would like to see it play a strong role in the game, and I do think that will be the case. But I do think the art style makes me not be able to take it as seriously as I normally would, when I probably would have been much more immersed if it was a realistic style. But when it all comes down to it, I just don't think the game's ready to ship. Now, of course, this was just a pre-alpha demo, but I would like to see some major overhauls in terms of character movement, control responsiveness, dodge consistency, and some of the other things I mentioned as well. I wouldn't go so far as to say what I played was bad, but it does need work. So hopefully the devs take a lot of feedback that people are going to give and implement it so that the product they deliver can be the best possible. Because I truly believe there's a lot of good potential here, and if it gets that extra time in the oven, I do think it can be realized. Anyways though guys, that is going to do it for the video today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like on it and let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. And be sure to subscribe if you're new around here. But with all that, I will catch you in the next one.